One of the things that I'm often asked is, why do you all keep changing the NIV? Can't you just leave well enough alone? And I understand that sentiment. I mean, you buy it, you read it, you mark it, you memorize it, and then 10 years or so later, another version of the NIV comes out and it's different. And I understand why that can be frustrating. But there's also a couple of very good reasons why the NIV is constantly being updated. And let me start with just a bit of the history of the NIV. The NIV began when a businessman was trying to share his faith with a friend, and he was reading to him out of the King James. And his friend just laughed at him. He said, "Am I supposed to understand that?" That's the single incident that sparked the NIV. And the man went to the New York Bible Society, and eventually it's become Biblica now, International Bible Society. And the desire was to create a translation that would sound right to people who live now. It wouldn't sound old, and that's a good thing, right? So if the core desire of the NIV is to be understandable in broad international English, then that means we have to stay up with the developments in the language. Now, sometimes we have developments in scholarship that affect change. We're learning culture better, we're learning background issues better, we're learning maybe theology or things that affect the translation. But a lot of the updates have to do with language, and language is really changing. And it's not just gender language, that's certainly the bulk of the change in English these days. But English itself is changing, and if at the core of the NIV is to be understandable, then we have to be very aware of those changes in English. I'll give you a somewhat a humorous example. A good friend of mine who will remain anonymous, who's a professor at a seminary, was in the Portland area lecturing to a group of pastors. And my friend had become a Christian in the midst of Campus Crusade for Christ, and they tended to use the NASB version of the Bible. And so that's what he got, he memorized and he read. So the NASB is what's in his memory. He has since shifted to the NET, and so when he reads and he lectures, he tends to lecture out of the NET. But he was going along, he was talking about John the Baptist, and he got to a point where you could see him shift into his memory. And he said something like, it was John's verse about, "There's one among you who's greater than I, and I'm not worthy to stoop down and untie his thong." Well, the audience was polite and didn't respond. But I went to my friend afterwards and I said, "I truly hope you don't stoop down and untie anyone's thong." And my friend laughed and, "Oh, did I say that?" Yeah, and that's just what, 30 years? And that's just an example. English changes, like any language, but English right now is in a real rapid state of change. And so what we have to do is to make sure that we stay true to the original commitment in the NIV, and that is to make sure the Bible is in understandable English. Now, again, the problem is we may change your favorite verse. I'm sorry. But we might also get your favorite verse right. All right? Psalm 23, "Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death," right? The King James. Do you know that the Hebrew word doesn't mean death? The Hebrew word means a lonely, desolate, dangerous place, which the King James interpreted to be death. Well, the NIV comes along. We understand that that's what that Hebrew word means. And actually, the force of what the psalmist is saying has to do more with our day-to-day lives when we are in dangerous places, not just death, but in dangerous places. Our shepherd is with us. See, that was a change that was brought about through a better understanding, perhaps, of what the Hebrew means. I've been tasked with looking at John 3:16. You want to talk about a very difficult verse to change, but let me tell you, I don't know what's going to happen on the committee. It's a committee. There's 15 of us. We vote. So just because I want something doesn't mean that's going to happen. But when you say, "For God so loved the world," what does "so" mean? Well, I have yet to have anyone tell me anything other than so much. Well, do you know the Greek word cannot mean so much? And if you check some of the newer translations, they're doing things like God loved the world, and as the ideas, and as a result of his love, that's the so, this is how he loved the world, he gave. So doesn't mean so much, it means in this way. So I don't know what I'm going to recommend to the committee this summer or what the committee is going to agree to, but there's just another example of, yeah, we may mess with your favorite verse, we may get it right. Okay? So the NIV is, from day one, has been under a constant process of being reevaluated, of changes. The personnel change on the committee, there's 15 of us, and some people retire or they get off the committee, and so you get different mixes of scholars on the committee. But we've always met every summer. And so the first NIV came out in 1978. Committee kept working on things. The next revision came out in 1984, and that's the one that was the most popular. And then in 2005, another update was going to come out. But this was one that, because of the gender language and how the committee had handled it, caused so much concern. And so that update was published as the TNIV, today's NIV, and the 84 was kept going as well as being published. And then when I came on the committee at 2010, we were told that both the 84 and the TNIV were going to be canceled, and our work was going to be published, and it's going to be called the 2011. So there's nothing nefarious going on here. We meet every summer. We keep updating it. We look at scholarship. We look at what we learned from language. We spend a lot of time looking at English and how English is being used. Gender language, yes, but subjunctive and all those other things that are in a state of flux in English right now. So that's why the NIV is constantly being updated. I'm sorry if we mess your favorite verse up, but you'll thank us when we get it right. Right for today. Thanks.